We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Al, could you do roll call, please?
Benson.
Here.
Sarda. Here. Ferdig.
Here.
Hoffman.
Present.
Minor. Here. Mosier.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber. Here. Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
City Attorney Dan Herder.
Here. You have before you the minutes of the regular meeting of October 14th. What is your pleasure?
Move the minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. And now we have a proclamation. So this is for Monarch City, USA Day. Whereas the monarch butterfly is an iconic North American species whose multi-generational migration and metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly has captured the imagination of millions of Americans. And whereas the brilliant orange and black monarchs are among the most easily recognizable of the butterfly species that call the Americas home. Their migration takes them from as far north as Canada and during the winter months as far south as Mexico City. A single monarch can travel hundreds to thousands of miles. And whereas cities, towns, states, and countries have a critical role to play to help save the monarch butterfly, and the city of Yankton has played a role by planting 6 pollinator plot areas at Marne Creek West Greenway. And whereas every citizen of Yankton can make a difference for the monarch by planting native milkweed and native nectar plants to provide habitat for the monarch and also other pollinators in locations where people live, work, learn, play, and worship. And whereas on behalf of the citizens of Yankton who have already joined the city in creating healthy habitat for the magnificent monarch butterfly and other pollinators, we are honored to be among the communities in the United States to be designated as a Monarch City, USA. And whereas we encourage other cities across our great nation to take action with us so that the monarch butterfly will once again flourish across the continent. Now, therefore, the city of Yankton does proclaim October 22nd as Yankton as Monarch City, USA Day in the city of Yankton, which was, of course, last week, but we'll celebrate the whole month. So with that, let's have some applause.
I know it just seems to be the silliest little thing to be celebrating the monarchs, but you know, the population is in decline, and what is it, Brittany? 1 of every 3 bites of food that we take is provided to us by our pollinators. I believe that is correct. So we've discovered that milkweed is no longer considered noxious. So let's go Yankton, let's plant milkweed left and right. I believe we are the first city in South Dakota to be a monarch city. The other places are like wildlife places up by Watertown. I don't remember what they are, like a garden or something. So go Yankton, go pollinators. Wings up.
Amy, we should add, you were passing out little baggies earlier, and that's not contraband of any kind. if you want to explain what you handed out to commissioners.
These are a gift from Ariana Terry, who is also known as the Milkweed Lady. I think she's a master gardener here in town. And she is a lover of butterflies. And so she has milkweed that she has sourced. Some of it is swamp, some of it is common, all of it is plantable, and the butterflies will party if you get it planted. But I wouldn't plant it now. I would wait till spring. Or you can plant it in a pot inside and get it going and then transfer whenever spring happens, June,
So I think we all want to be part of a butterfly party. So we have an opportunity to help out in that regards. So thank you, everyone who has worked on that. Moving on, city manager's report.
So befitting that our resident Commissioner Butterfly accepted the proclamation for monarch butterflies. I have a few things for you, commissioners and members of the public. First, I'd like to tell you that our mission is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone, even the monarchs, to learn, engage, and thrive. So we're working hard at that. Our next meeting is not on a Monday. We have a holiday called Veterans Day, which is very important for a lot of reasons, on Monday the 11th. So our meeting is Tuesday the 12th. So for media and public to know that 7 o'clock will be our regular meeting time, but we will be meeting on Tuesday. Wanted to bring that up in conjunction with a lot of gratitude to Bravo Battery, who is now home in our state, and we're happy for that. Especially welcome home to our employees, Officer Rog Beekler, as well as Sean Stewin from the Street Department, who will be joining us back on our team after defending us and representing our country. So we welcome them home. Our next work session will be on 11/25. We were going to be talking about the old water treatment plant. So the 1928 plant. We'll be getting you some information on that. I'd like you to start thinking about what you see for the future of that facility. And if any of you would like to go see that, Kyle will certainly take you through. We can take you through to take a look at it again if it's just been a while or if you've never been in that building. I've sent an email to you, forwarded to you from Casey Haberman. You may have received it yourself regarding the Destination Next survey. That's a survey. It takes about 20 minutes to fill out to help the Convention and Visitors Bureau with their strategic planning process. So please fill that out. There is a deadline for that. But if you get that filled out, just coming off an hour tourism season, it will help her and those folks involved in that strategic plan make better decisions going forward with our visitorship, tourism, and all the great things that she's doing with that. Wanted to mention the census. I know you guys are talking about census a little later on in your agenda, and I wanted to let you know that the distribution of more than $675 billion in federal funds, grants, and support to states, counties, and communities are based on census data. So that money is spent on everything from schools, hospitals, roads, public works programs, and other vital programs in our communities. That's why it's really important that folks get out and make sure that they're counted. And our complete count committee that you're going to talk about a little bit later will go over some of that and establish the committee if approved. Also, next week, Mayor Johnson and I will be meeting, maybe it's 2 weeks from now, we'll be meeting with Representatives Schwach, Hunhoff, and Senator Kennedy about the next upcoming legislative session. So if you have things that you really want us to mention in that meeting and talk to them about, I've put together a list of things important to cities in general and important to Yankton. And I'd like to know what things you'd like us to include in that list if you have things. We try to sit down with them before each session to talk about things that are going to come up, and so they know our positions. We do talk to them throughout the legislative session. If you have no questions of me, I'll let you get to your business.
Are there any more questions for the city manager? Okay, thank you. Next, we have public appearances. This is a time when anyone in the audience can address the commission about an item not on tonight's agenda, and if you wish to do that, we ask that you step to the podium. Seeing no movement in the audience, we will move on to the consent item agenda. Number 1 is consideration of Memorandum 19-228 and Resolution 19-61 recommending that November 25th be established as the date for a public hearing on the special assessment roll for removal of noxious vegetation and abatement. Number 2 is establish November 12th as the date for a public hearing and consideration of the applications for renewal of alcoholic beverage licenses for the 2019. That would be January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020 licensing period. And number 3 is consideration memorandum 19-227 regarding a request to shoot a small fireworks show during the holiday Festival of Lights parade on December 5th. What is your pleasure?
Move the consent items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about these items? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on these items? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 19-221 regarding the request for a special events retail on-sale liquor license for November 9th from Dayhoff Enterprises doing business as O'Malley's Bar, and this would be for an event at the National Field Archery Association headquarters. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Fertig.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schwam.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under old business is consideration of memorandum 19-218, which is a public hearing for consideration of ordinance number 1025, an ordinance amending certain language in the definition of sign area in the Yankton City Code of Ordinances. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave Mingo, would you explain to the public what exactly we are considering here?
This is one of the most simple, complicated things that that we can consider when it comes to an ordinance amendment. The fact is that we ended up with a typo or a housekeeping issue when we rewrote our sign ordinance in 2013, I believe it was. We ended up with 2 words in the definition of sign area that should not have been included, or if we were going to leave those 2 words in there, we should have added 2 more words in there. Either way, it was wrong. So what we have is the word on premise in our definition of sign area, which would have been fine if we would have also left the words off premises signs in, so that we were treating all signs alike when we were calculating sign area. But by leaving only on premises signs in the definition, we inadvertently excluded off premises signs from the definition of that calculation, therefore creating a loophole or complicating how off-premises signs would be added or could be done. So typically when you have a pylon sign, for example, you're driving down the road and you're looking at this side. Well, you don't see this side at the same time. So we calculate that as one sign area. Even though there's 2, say 10 by 10 areas, we only calculate one side of it at a time. If we would leave the definition the way it is and exclude that terminology, a complicating factor for the sign contractors is those signs could then start to be tipped in a manner that you could maybe see both of them at the same time at an angle as you're driving down the road. But if you do that and you can see both of them at the same time, then our calculation has to change. So your sign can only be half as big maybe as it was before. Again, just by including a couple words in the definition, it gets really complicated, and we can clear all this out by eliminating the words on premises in our definition of sign area, and get us back to the industry standard as far as is how we review and approve sign permits. Questions? It's still complicated, I know, but.
So how did this come about to finding this? Did someone want to
So-
put a sign up, or do you just
so
read it that?
We had an example of a sign contractor that came in to get a permit for an off-premises sign, and in our ordinance review to issue his sign, we couldn't apply the rules that should have been applied. So yeah, we found an error. He got to install his sign in this manner, which wasn't really what we were, the target of the ordinance, and commenced the process of amending the ordinance, which is why we're here talking about two words in an entire code.
Is there any more commission discussion? Thank you for that explanation, Dave, and the visual enhancements. Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schram.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under old business is consideration of memorandum 19-211, which is a public hearing of ordinance number 1026, amending the emergency snow route ordinance. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Adam, could you explain to the public what exactly we're changing here?
This ordinance change would be adding Cedar Street This ordinance change would be adding Cedar Street from 2nd to 4th in the downtown Meridian District to the emergency snow route list, which would enable us to have vehicles removed during plowing and snow removal operations in the wintertime. And it just goes along with the other streets in that district and the process of snow removal that takes place on those streets as well. So
And we'll be taking measures to inform property owners in that area so they're ready for this winter?
So it's actually already signed as an emergency snow route, and it has been for a while. And I believe it's been treated that way by law enforcement as well. So nothing new will really happen there other than that it'll be stated in the ordinance.
So another one of these bookkeeping.
Bookkeeping cleanup, yes.
Yep, okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any more discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schram.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 4 under old business is consideration of memorandum 19-212, which is a public hearing of ordinance number 1027, amending the truck route ordinance. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Adam, could you describe to the public again what's going on here?
So this ordinance change is another housekeeping cleanup item. We were contacted by a GPS mapping company asking why our truck route still went to the Meridian pedestrian bridge. So when the conversion took place on the Meridian Bridge from a highway bridge to a pedestrian bridge and the Discovery Bridge was opened up, the truck routes were never changed to use the Discovery Bridge. And this ordinance changes cleans that up, removes 2nd Street from Broadway to 4th Street, as well as Walnut Street from the Meridian Bridge to 2nd Street, and it adds Broadway from the Discovery Bridge, excuse me, to 2nd Street.
Any more commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schram.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to new business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 19-219 regarding resolution 19-58, a plat of 920 Broadway Avenue. Larry and Peggy Olson are the owners. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, I see you've played musical chairs with Adam there. You won this round, so
I don't.
tell us what's going
I
on.
don't have any fancy graphics for this discussion. Private party subdivision of an existing parcel that includes a structure with a common wall in it that meets codes for separation requirements. The former slumberland at 920 Broadway Avenue will, if this plat is approved, be divided into 2 lots, one of them being the south-west tract. Commonly, when people who know the structure, that was the addition that was put on about 16 or 17 years ago, will be separated and be able to be owned separately from the original, what was the Sunshine Grocery Store, the main structure that's on the site. When considering this plat, the Planning Commission had a substantial amount of discussion about parking and uses of space within the structures. We went through the owner's proposal for space utilization, and it was very close, but the proposed space utilization does meet the parking requirements. At that time, we also informed the owners that if they were to increase the intensity of the usage as far as what our parking requirements demand, that they may be restricted to use in some areas. In other words, for example, instead of being able to have retail in a certain amount of square footage, they may only be able to have retail in a smaller square footage and have to have more storage area or something like that, depending upon how the uses evolve in the site. So anytime that a building permit comes forward for a remodeling or a repurposing of the facility on either side, there'd have to be parking calculation reconsidered. We do that all the time anyway. It's very rare that we're this close on a subdivision though. So all parties are well aware of the situation, and everything looks good. Both the Planning Commission and staff recommend approval.
Commissioners, any discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
Minor,
Aye.
Moser,
Aye.
Schramm,
Abstain, conflict.
Weber,
Aye.
Benson. Aye. Sarda,
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-223 regarding a closeout of the permanent pavement marker project. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Minor,
Aye.
Moser,
Aye.
Schramm,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Benson,
Aye.
Sarda,
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-220 regarding a bid award, or I guess a series of bid awards for surplus property. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Moser,
Aye.
Schramm,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Benson,
Aye.
Sarda,
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Minor,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 4 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-224 and resolution 19-60 regarding establishment of a fee rate structure for special events. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy or Todd, did you want to describe what we're proposing here and the philosophy behind it?
Going back in time, when we originally started the discussion about having a special events coordinator and at that time wanting to have more events, and that was a part of experiences and those things with across the citizens in different places in town. We talked about having a fee. At that time, we chose not to do it. We went with a donation type statement saying, hey, we love to help you, we love to move things for you, but in the end, it takes staff time on Fridays and Mondays, especially from the Parks Department. The Street Department does have some time involved also, depending on what materials are requested. And it would be nice if you would provide a donation to help cover some of the fees as we've bought different signs and trailers and wear and tear on the stuff that we do own and we'll have to replace. So in this time that we've had the special events coordinator in place and have been working with the applications, we've received one donation. So most people decide not to give us a donation. Second thing that we've run into, maybe more importantly, is as you'll see in this application fee, is the days prior to the event. And we took this to the Park Advisory Board, and originally we were going to charge a fee across the board, even for 90 days prior, or if it's a street closure, 30 days prior. But in talking with them, they thought we should incentivize people to do things earlier. What we started to run into this year is, of the events that we have going on, people started to turn in their applications to us 30 days in advance, and then 15 days in advance, and then a week in advance, and then sometimes the week of the event. Again, sometimes, yeah, not so big a deal. We have things planned, and so now we got to rearrange schedules and get stuff moved. But what ends up being more sometimes of an issue is when it involves alcohol or road closures, and we have to have either the commission approval at least on one meeting, or sometimes if there's two meetings, and so now all of a sudden we don't have time and we're scrambling. The other thing that happens is the application does get through email passed around to the different department heads, and then if there's questions, there's time to ask Brittany the question, and then she's got to go to the organizers, and then she can't get a hold of them through email or phone calls, and so the process ends up getting dragged out. So again, we're not trying to discourage people from having events. That's not what this is about. This is get us your information as soon as possible so we can work through the issues, because even when we get things 90 days in advance, all of a sudden 30 days out we discover that we missed something, or they bring us something that they forgot to tell us, or again, we do make mistakes, and it just puts a bind on us. So the whole point of this is, hey, we want to continue to do events. We still want to provide materials for people, but we want to get things noticed to us well in advance. We can plan. Everybody can have the paperwork done. The commission can see things. People have time to get, again, no parking downtown. You have time to go to the businesses, get the document signed. We can show it to the commission, all of those type of things. So that's where we're trying to go, is to get a little bit of help on getting our hands around the number of events that has grown through the years.
What are the fee amounts based on? I assume they don't get anywhere near covering costs.
No, we kind of looked at some other, through time, again, going back to the beginning, we looked at if we called other cities and asked them what they do, you look up stuff on the internet. So we've kind of based it on what other communities do, based on fees that we already have in place for other things in the community. Again, we don't want to make it a fee that penalizes anybody. Again, there's a lot of nonprofits that do them. They're fundraisers. You know, we always have that argument about, will you pay for a shelter rental? Will you pay for this and that? So we tried to base the fees on, it helps cover a little bit of our time. Again, in future, we're going to have to replace signs, garbage cans, picnic tables, those type of things. So we get a little bit of money in, but again, based on kind of what other communities do is through the research is what we've come up with.
Commissioners, any discussion?
I would pose this question to this commission. Are we really, it seems to me, when I read it, it seems like we're basically trying to penalize somebody that comes in late. Well, there may be a good event, and is this what we're about, is trying to get a little fee to, I mean, we're encouraging events. We've been doing such a good job of that. We've increased our activity, And I just think that we should consider why we need to, is this really what we want to do? It could discourage a good event coming forward, and I think that with this small amount that I don't think it should happen.
I would like to just add that all events that have happened previously do get an email right in January, usually within the first 2 weeks, with the application and just a reminder. And then after the event, we always do a follow-up, and then I also remind them to get their, remind them what they had to do to make this event happen, and then also remind them for next year, this would still need these permits, it takes about this long, so just so they're aware.
I guess I don't see these so much as a penalty, but an incentive to help all parties have a successful event.
Yeah, I would agree. I sit on the Parks Advisory Board, and this was a discussion there, and it was felt to incentivize people to get on the docket so we're aware of the events was why you saw that zero balance come in. And I really like that idea because it's not that we're against last minute events, it's just that it takes a lot of work to put those together and they don't just happen overnight. So if we can incentivize people to get it on the docket so that we can begin the work, it'll save a lot of people a lot of time, energy, and money, possibly.
Sometimes it becomes a safety issue too when there's something new that comes up in an event and we're not quite sure how it should go about, so it takes, Al, a lot of digging, and sometimes we're just kind of scurrying because we want this event to happen or we want this thing to happen, and it's really new. And so encouraging organizers to think ahead and really plan so that way across the board everything is as safe as possible, they're permitted, they have the right permissions. That way in the middle of their event we're not coming to them and saying, sorry, you have to shut down because you don't have the proper permits or license for this event.
One of the questions I don't believe we asked during the Parks Advisory Board meeting, assuming this needs to be paid prior to the event, would you work with any event if it's new or they need maybe what they raise from the event to pay the fee? Would you work with them on that, or does it have to be paid before the event if they get this late in the game?
Right. I don't know if we've had that discussion yet. I think we would be willing to work with them. They sign the special events application, and so once this gets approved or not approved, we're going to go to the special events application and add some more verbiage, and so that's probably something we need to put in there. I think ideally we would like it paid ahead of time, but understand that some of these don't have the money or the funds ahead of time, so maybe a 30-day, a 30-day time period after the event happens to send their money in.
We can always hold the check. We can always get the payment and then hold the check and not deposit it till after the event occurs.
I'm just saying in case of a hardship or in case of a new event that, sometimes might pop up because it's a fundraiser for a special circumstance. That
Absolutely.
might be something to think about.
Any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Trump.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffner.
No.
Minor.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 5 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-222 and resolution 19-59 regarding a request by the Holiday Festival of Lights Committee for special events parking ordinance number 933 to be in place during the Holiday Festival of Lights on December 5th, as well as suspension of the alcohol consumption rules. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Brittany, maybe this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about your plans for this year. I know we have a theme that we've announced.
So the theme this year is Christmas carols, and I've kind of been starting our promotion a little bit earlier this year. So we are at 16 registrations for the floats for the parade this year, which is actually pretty huge because usually it's not until mid-November where we really start getting numbers. So I'm pretty happy with that number, not too worried just yet. The request is just for 3rd Street. I think we've seen in the past that having the obstruction, and then also because it's at night, so it's a little harder to see. And with all of the lights, we just want to try and keep it as safe as possible for both the parade entries and the spectators. And so the request is just for 3rd Street from Cedar to Capitol. The parade will go down 2nd, so it'll head west on 2nd. It'll go north on Cedar and then east to 3rd Street, and then the parade will just kind of fizzle after Capitol. They can go where they need to go after that. As always, we will have the tree lighting right after the parade. We did just find our tree. There is a spruce tree right in front of the concession stands at Memorial Park that will eventually have to get cut down because of the construction. And so we are able to use that tree and just, kind of reuse that. So we're pretty excited about that. So you'll see that in the next 2 weeks. The park staff is kind of looking at weather. But in the next 2 weeks, we should be getting that taken down and set up and let the festivities begin.
Will Santa Claus be there?
Santa Claus will be there, and Santa usually is the last float in the parade, but due to heavy traffic at the end of the parade, he is going to be first. So Santa's coming early to lead the parade this year.
Could you please have him check if Al is on the naughty list?
I will.
I got a question maybe for Ross. So if you suspend an open container law, what, I see that you're going to serve cups, whatever, with the sticker on it. What keeps anybody from walking out with like a can of beer or a bottle of beer when the open container law is suspended?
The police.
But I mean, how is that enforceable without by designating a certain type of container?
Ultimately, we are simply saying you can have an open container in that stretch of road and not get arrested for having an open container. So whether it's a designated cup or you bring your own beverage really doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have an important question for Commander Foote. So during last year's event, we had a security issue with the Grinch showing up and stealing some presents and spreading some
I can't tell you
unbecoming behavior.
I can't tell you for sure, but I think he's under lock and key yet, so he shouldn't be coming out, but there might be a possibility.
Okay, well, we appreciate your efforts to make sure he stays locked up and doesn't pollute our perfect Christmas parade. I actually had, after last year's event, I had a handful of people come up to me, some in tears, some almost in tears, just saying what a wonderful event it was. So I hope all of you get an opportunity to attend it and enjoy it.
Just one quick little story. So I kind of got the idea from Hallmark movies because I'm a Hallmark junkie. And at the tree lighting, I overheard someone say, "This is like a Hallmark movie," and I wanted to turn around and just hug them because that's exactly what I wanted to hear at that time. I was also 6 months pregnant, so hormones might have played a bit in that, but when they said that, I almost started crying and turned around and hugged this lady because it was a great statement to hear.
Well, thank you to everyone who's organizing that event. It will be here before we know it. With that, is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schwab.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-225 regarding a downtown holiday lighting partnership request. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, can you talk about what's being proposed here?
Well, in the theme of Christmas, one of Santa's little helpers, Larry Olson, would like to partner with the city to bring more holiday lighting downtown. Mr. Olson has offered to purchase some string lights to wrap around our light poles on 3rd and 4th Streets, about 150 light poles. And if you've been downtown, you see that some of those lights have already been installed. So while it's our understanding that this is a bit independent from the efforts of Light Up Yankton. This is certainly in keeping with what Light Up Yankton is trying to do, which is to add more lights to the community, and particularly during the holiday season. They have some other plans that they'll be implementing as we get closer to the holiday season. So this is not in any conflict with what Mr. Olson is doing. He has agreed to purchase the lights. We need a little bit of help. Some of our light poles, our outlets on our poles are in disrepair, need to be replaced. Some are not working. We believe we can get all that work done for $1,000 or less, but we don't have anything budgeted right now to do that work. Bob Reichen is working on getting our poles up to standard so we can accommodate these lights. Larry is purchasing them, as I said, and having them installed. So what we'll do with our existing holiday decorations that go on the poles downtown is place them other parts of the community. So this would just be added. So if you approve this, we're going to do our best to get as many poles upgraded as possible before the holidays and before it gets too cold. That's already in the works, but certainly we'll go the opposite way if it's not approved. So we're asking for $1,000 from BBB. I don't think we're going to need that kind of funds, but just to help us with the upgrades and the installation of outlets on poles where we don't have outlets in the Meridian District downtown area.
Amy, I'm sorry, I might have missed this. So Larry will be taking all the labor to put them up and take them down?
Yes, I know he's putting them up and he's willing to take them down. What I didn't ask, is he willing to store them, Todd? Do you happen to know that? We have a light storage situation with decorations, but I don't know if we've talked about storage.
We did not talk about storage. My conversations with Larry when this first started, I know he talked about installing them and buying them and taking them down, but I don't know that we talked about storage. So we do, obviously it's just string lights, so the amount of space they take up will be very little. And we do have a trailer at the park shop that we store our Broadway lights in and our garland and sprays that we use downtown. So being able to accommodate the lights shouldn't be an issue. Testing them next year before they come back out and get installed will be the other thing that we'll have to talk through with Larry if we're doing that, or if his crews will do that again. But those are a couple issues we'll have to work through with him.
And we talked about, are they going to make it through a hard winter? We have sometimes issues with vandals, etc. I think the upgrades to the lights are probably a good idea regardless of, if this is something that's continued, but it's also a nice thing to try to see if people like how it looks. And we have a private partner. I always want to encourage folks that are willing to do something like that if we can help them. So we're bringing it forward to you guys. He's probably hanging more lights tonight, but wanted to ask you guys for a little bit of funding and permission to move forward.
I just think this is another great example where the downtown has people who want to come forward and support it and make it a better place. And so I thank city staff for being flexible, because I know Larry's a guy who likes to just get things done when he's got it in his head, and sometimes we think there are things that need to be considered before that. So I appreciate you working with him through that process. And I hope it turns out to be a really nice enhancement to the downtown during the holiday season.
And for those that paid attention to the Meridian District survey, lighting was one of the things that people wanted to see more downtown.
Yes. So thank you to Larry and Peggy for their contributions. With that, is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Fertig.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-216 regarding an additional deputy city attorney. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I believe Ross is going to introduce this gentleman to us.
Distinguished commissioners, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce you guys to Bo Barrett. He is the newest addition to our law office, and we were able to pull him from Marlowe, Woodward, and Huff, where he's worked for the last 4-ish years. 5 years. He's got quite a background in legal writing, research, and civil litigation, which dovetails nicely with the work that I, as city attorney, have to do for the city of Yankton. So I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce him to you tonight, and that way, if he's ever here on my behalf, you know why this guy is sitting in my chair. And also, if you should need to reach me and I am otherwise occupied, you are welcome to pick Bo's brain. If you guys would like to hear from him, I can make him feel uncomfortable and say a little something about himself. But I would ask that you guys approve the addendum to my contract that authorizes him to appear as city attorney before the court for matters of civil litigation.
Before we hear from Bo, just a clarification for the public, we are not adding any more payment to the contract. This is something you work out on your end. Our payment stays the same.
That is correct. I'm not adjusting the contract other than that I can send him as my staff on my behalf for matters that appear before the court.
Bo, tell us a little about yourself. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I went to law school at USD in Vermillion. Before that, I had lived in Yankton for a year. Worked with Dave Cornerman at AT&T. Realized I didn't want to sell cell phones anymore, so I decided to make a really poor decision and become a lawyer. I then moved to Vermillion, and after graduating from law school, got a job with Marlowe, Woodward, Huff. I moved back to town. I've been here since then, and I really appreciate being a part of the community. Do you have any questions?
Welcome. We look forward to your service to the community.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out, Bo.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 8 is just a tiny footnote of business for the City Commission. Consideration memorandum 19-226 regarding a bid award for the Heather Family Aquatic Center, which of course is something we've been talking about for a long time, and we have good news to report. I guess first of all I'd ask for a motion and a second.
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, do you want to introduce this item and talk about where the bids came in?
Yes, on a Thursday, October 17th, we held the bid opening for the Heather Family Aquatic Center. The bid package included the base bid as well as 3 alternatives. Those alternatives included additional irrigation in the vicinity of the aquatics center project, sidewalk and trail replacements along the perimeter of the project, and then an accommodation for future security cameras in the parking lot area of the facility. We did receive 8 bids, which is exciting just to have that number of bids. They were all very close together. The low bidder, however, was Wellful Construction from here in Yankton with a base bid with alternatives of $10,386,500. And this bid is well below our engineer's estimate of about $14.1 million. So we were excited about that. Stockwell Engineers is here. David Locke from Stockwell is here this evening. He and his staff have reviewed the bids and the bond and all of those important documents, and they're recommending approval of the bid to Wellful Construction along with all 3 engineers, alternatives. Also that you authorize me to sign all associated contracts and the notice to proceed for construction. And that's because it sounds like our contractor would like to get going on some of the demolition yet this fall, and our weather is running out, so we'd like to move this ahead as soon as we possibly can. This project was significantly under the engineer's estimate. I'm not recommending any changes to the financing yet or to the scope of the project at this time. Once we get to final completion, or substantial completion at least, we may be making recommendations to you about the financing or about paying off the project earlier. But we want to wait to see what could happen because, we can have change orders, etc. We also may do some things that a low bid allows us to do. For example, we have fittings and fixtures put in for a rock wall. Maybe that's something we'll decide we go ahead and purchase. One thing we talked about is instead of our city crews paving the asphalt parking lot, we may do a separate contract for a concrete paved parking lot that will last longer, be lower maintenance. We'll visit with our engineering staff and Todd about what types of things that we would like to do now that we have a little more wiggle room in the project. But the important thing is to get this underway and get this built after the community asked us to resoundingly. So with that, I'll hand it over to David Locks, who he can talk a little bit about the bid environment and how we benefited from that.
Thank you, Amy. Commissioners, Mayor. As Amy said, the bids came in substantially lower than what we had estimated, and we attribute that to a number of different factors. First off, I'd say is good decisions in regards to the city staff and design team and us all working together on the project in regards to this was a very attractive project. As you can see, as Amy said, we had a very high number of bidders, and in talking with the apparent low bidder, they had a significant number of subcontractors for each discipline as well, which included 6 pool contractors bidding on this project. So it was a very attractive project to contractors that we have been discussing with, and that this resulted in a good time of year to also bid the project. If we had bid this earlier in the summer, which is when we did our last estimate, we feel it would have been a very different story, but we just felt like we had kind of a perfect storm of the right time to bid the project. We had a number of contractors that were very hungry for the project, and we saw the big range that we saw in our discussions was in regards to the pool contractor bid anywhere from approximately a little over $5 million to a little over $8 million. So the different kind of spread of pool contractors is what was kind of the difference there in the bids. And so as Amy said, we're looking to move forward with construction here shortly, and happy to answer any questions that you guys might have in regards to us.
I have one. You answered one of the questions I had, and that's how we got so off on that. I mean, all of the bids came in under, and that was exciting to see. Mm-hmm. Could you explain to us the base package, and was anything that was in renderings cut that the public might notice isn't part of this bid?
No, there was not. There was a number of, actually from master plan to the final the final concept, we listened to the public in regards to the lazy river was lengthened, the zero depth entry was made larger, and so from a cutting standpoint, there wasn't anything that was significantly left out that was presented at any of the public meetings from early master plan and all the way through the construction project. As I said, I think it was just good decisions that were made as a team with city staff in regards to kind of the orientation of some of those elements. And it's as Amy said, all the bids were very, very close. So it's a good set of documents. It's a good design. And we think you guys are going to be very, very happy and very excited with the end product.
I think it seems like this is an opportunity. Obviously, this is really good news, but I think we need to really be aware that this is an opportunity for us to maintain our goodwill to this community, and not go out and talk so much about how we're going to add on this or do this. I think we need to focus on the money we're going to save and not bond or paid early, whatever we decide. I know we have to take a time out because of the possibility of changes, but I just think it's an opportunity for us to show goodwill and talk about the the amount we're going to save rather than how we're going to spend extra money that we were given the opportunity to do so.
Is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Thank you, David. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Hopefully we see some movement pretty soon. That'll be exciting for everyone because I get a lot of questions. Are they going to start like tomorrow? So.
The plan is at least get started on generally the building this year.
Okay. For those in the viewing audience who couldn't hear, they say the goal this fall yet is to proceed with demolition at least this in the next month. All right. Moving on to number 9 under new business. Continuation of this discussion, kind of, is consideration of Memorandum 19-217 in support of Resolution 19-57 regarding a potential land, water, and conservation fund grant for the Heather Family Aquatic Center splash pad. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Todd, can you tell the public what we're pursuing here?
Yes, Land Water Conservation Fund is grant money that comes down from the federal government and is passed on to the state. Historically, in the past, there used to be every other year, state would use money 1 year from this funding, and then cities would be allowed to use, again, through a grant process and application process, the state would decide what cities, counties, whatever may use their money. Over the course of the time, things have changed a little bit. Land Water Conservation Fund monies now are available every year to cities, so that's changed. Going back a couple years, $50,000 was the max you could apply for. Again, your project was going to be much more than that because it does take a 50-50 match, and they're looking for more than 50-50 usually. That used to be $50,000 was the max. Then last year, again, we did make this request to the City Commission to look at funding maybe playground equipment at Westside Park and funding the splash pad at the Aquatic Center. Again, we were at a point where we didn't have things budgeted for Westside Park, and we knew we may have to push that depending on how we needed to reallocate some priorities during budgeting. And then we had the public vote that needed to occur in December. So we were not awarded any land water conservation funds last year. Last year, the max went up to $75,000. So this fall, in speaking with the administrators at the state level, they've taken off the max. They wanted, part of the conversation was they want to see bigger projects funded, not a lot of small different projects. They wanted to get some bigger stuff done, which was encouraging to hear for us. So worked with District 3, and we looked at specifically at the splash pad, which is when you total up the estimates from, again, not actual cost, but estimates from what we were working with. Stockwell's, I think the splash pad comes in about $572,000 or somewhere in that range. We would like to ask Land Water Conservation Funds for $200,000. Again, part of the match is First Dakota National Bank did pledge $100,000 toward the splash pad and specifically wanted some naming rights at the splash pad area. So that gets us up to $300,000, and then, I misspoke, $543,000 total for the splash pad area estimate. So we, the city, would be funding $243,000 of that if we would get the $200,000 from the Land Water Conservation Fund. So we are pretty excited about this request, not only in the amount, but we think it's going to be seen favorably at the state level. Again, the splash pad, the reason we're asking specifically for that is with the fencing that we talked about all along with this project, we would like the splash pad, depending on the spring weather, maybe to be open before the rest of the facility, but more importantly, we definitely talked about after we get into that beginning of August, middle of August, when we close down, when school starts up, we don't have the staffing. You would only be open on weekends or after school. And again, going back in time a decade, we tried that, kept records, fiscally, it just didn't make sense to try to do that. So when the pool season shuts down at the beginning of August, the splash pad can stay open well past Labor Day, depending on weather. We see the popularity of splash pads because we have one in town down at the Meridian Plaza, and we know how popular that is. Cold days, windy days, when you think there wouldn't be kids running around and parents down there, there are. So we think, again, we really think this is going to be looked upon favorably, and we're excited about being able to apply for a larger amount.
This isn't something new. This is still part of the base package. We're just looking for ways to fund it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, to Jake's earlier point, I think this is an opportunity to us to keep the goodwill of the public and find grants to help fund this project and lower the burden to them at the end of the day, at least the local burden. Is there any more commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Good luck, Todd.
Thank you.
Number 10 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-229 regarding resolution 19-62 designating a complete count committee for the 2020 census. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I would be the commission liaison for this committee, which is to help create awareness about the census and encourage people to participate. As Amy said, it means a lot of dollars, grant funding, and different things like that for our community for the next 10 years. Brad Bees would be our staff liaison, so I know he will do a great job. Has already been feeding us information. Is there any more commission discussion on this item? Do we get a motion in a second? I'm sorry. Yes, we did. Okay. Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. With that, we do not need an executive session tonight, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.